Good afternoon. I want to talk about the preliminary results of a study that we did in Amsterdam of 83 healing reports of prayer. So, but I am a general practitioner. I am a huisarts, more in the southern part of the Netherlands, not far from Rotterdam. And I never thought of getting involved into this subject until, and I want to, well, this is the village where I had my practice for 30 years, which is a typical Dutch village with the windmill in front and the canal and the Reformed church in the background. So in 2007, there was a remarkable healing of a woman in my practice. She healed when she visited a prayer healing session. I'm not going into the medical details, but there was a lot of interest for her healing. She appeared on TV channels, in newspapers, and there were strong discussions, pro and contra. And as her medical practitioner, I got involved into it. Let me go back. Well, it doesn't. We can't know. This one. Always this one. Oh yeah. So as her medical practitioner, I got involved into it. There were. And she asked me to give her medical data to journalists whenever they asked for it. So I said, well, let's write all the medical data down and let's give it to a newspaper. That was Trouw, which is also a nationwide newspaper, and they published on it. So that was interesting, but there was a lot of was a lot of publicity. And I concluded that there is huge public interest for this subject, but there are not many facts. The subject is very much under-investigated. So I got into contact with a professor in theology at Free University, and he said, I think that you as a general practitioner should start an investigation on it. And then he was joined by Professor Gerrit Glas, which you have also seen yesterday. So it's something I miss. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is the next one. And now.
What do you?
No, now it's all right. So we started in 2010, we started thinking about the subject, discussing it. I visited various places. I visited Lourdes pilgrimage site in the south of France. And we had a proposal approved only in 2015, as it is not easy to find a good methodology. Now we had formulated 3 research questions, which you see here. The first one, what do we find when we view reports of prayer healing? What are the medical data, but what are the experiential data? As we noticed that there were strong experiences as well. Then we were wondering, do we find medically remarkable or scientifically unexplained cures? And the third research question was, are there frameworks that can help us to understand these findings? So again, after that, there was interest from the same newspaper, and they published an article saying Free University will start to research miracles. And then other newspapers joined in. There was again quite some publicity, and the big advantage of that was that we received 83 individual prayer healing reports. That was a good amount to start our investigation. So let's turn to the methods. There were 3 methodologies that we used. First first thing is that we established a medical assessment team at the VU Medical Center, at the University Medical Center, with different specialists, internal medicine, psychiatry, surgery, neurosurgery, and they were to evaluate the medical files that we collected. What they could do is, upon a medical file, they could label a healing as scientifically unexplained if they could not think of any scientific explanation at all, but then the criteria have to be very, very strict. Then they cannot find anything like that in medical literature, or they could decide that the healing is medically remarkable. And this usually relates to an unusual course of a disease in relationship with a prayer. So then secondly, as we noticed that experiences were very strong, we also did a qualitative study. A in-depth interviewer of the Faculty of Humanities, she did in-depth interviews in those cases where the assessment team was thinking of remarkability. Then after that, we collected the data from the assessment team and the qualitative data, and they were food for transdisciplinary discussions. And in the team, there were medical doctors, a theologian, a philosopher, psychiatrist, Gerrit Glas, and then also people from humanities. So let's turn to the results. We had received 83 reports, as I already said. We selected 27 for evaluation by the medical assessment team. There we had good files and serious diagnosis. In those 27, we did 14 in-depth interviews. And then eventually 11 healings were considered to be medically remarkable. No healings were considered to be scientifically unexplained. So then it will be interesting to know what are these medically remarkable healings. We noticed 11 of them. And now I'm not going to go into detail on those 11 diagnoses, that will be too much, but what you should do is you should look at the first 9, and all the first 9 are serious chronic diseases. And all of them disappeared instantaneously. And that is, I mean, all these 9 chronic diseases may disappear. They may improve gradually over time. Some of them may even disappear, but it is not normal to see them disappear instantaneously. Now, Crohn's, just to list a few diseases, these Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis are chronic bowel diseases. Multiple sclerosis, anorexia, and Parkinson's are also chronic diseases. The same applies for chronic herpetic keratitis, which is a serious condition, chronic condition of the eye. Now, the last 2, I will not go into detail but if you have questions about that, we can discuss it afterwards. That was hepatitis and acute leukemia. So those were the 11 healings that we considered to be medically remarkable, and that we considered that to be the first major result. Then we published about one case, the case with Parkinson's disease, in a medical journal. And what was interesting is that the patient herself joined in writing the article. She's a psychotherapist herself, so she could relate very well about the disease. Now, this one I want to skip because of time reasons. I want to turn to the second. Oh yeah, it jumps back.
For those who are online, they see your screen.
Oh, okay. This I consider to be the second major result. This is not about only the medical evaluations. This is about all 83 reports. We've found in over 70% of these 83 reports, we found recurrent characteristics. And we found them in all 14 in-depth interviews. And we had not, actually, we were surprised by it. Now, what are let me list those characteristics. A large majority had an instantaneous healing experience. So also those which were not considered remarkable. I mean, some people got healed all of a sudden from chronic backache. Now, that is of course very nice, but medically you can't say much about it. Then what also surprised us is that in many of those healing instances, the healing was unexpected. So people had not expected it. It came to them all of a sudden, sometimes at a prayer healing ceremony, but also someone who went to bed at night and then who was devastated because of her disease. And then she asked in her prayer that maybe it would be better if she would be taken out of this life. And then all of a sudden she had a very strong healing experience. She felt like a blanket wrapped around her, and she fell asleep, and the next morning already part of her symptoms had disappeared, and after that she was fully healed. So we were surprised by it, because we thought that expectancy would play a bigger role. Then many of them had strong sensory manifestations, like a touch at the site of the disease. For instance, those with a bowel disease felt a hand on the bowel. Strong emotions like incessant crying, a feeling of heat. A bit less often, we also noticed extra sensory perceptions, like a wind in a closed room. A light. We had 2 reports of levitation of people who were lifted from the floor. One of them said that others saw it as well. And one of them had a sense of levitation. And then also vision and prophecy. In one instance, the husband had said to his wife that I have a prophecy that you will be healed after prayer. These experiences were not only experiences at the moment itself, it also had a strong impact, a life-changing impact. People thereafter were not the same. They became different people with a bigger focus on their religion, a deepening of their faith. They also tended to become less materialistic. They got involved into social activities, so it was a big change in their life. So this combination of medical and experiential findings we found in over 60 cases of all reports, whether or not remarkable, medically remarkable, whether or not medically remarkable. The self-interpretation by all of them was that this was an act by God. And eventually we concluded that there was a specific pattern, and this is different from normal cures. As a general practitioner, I frequently see cures in my practice, fortunately. But if somebody gets better from pneumonia or from a problem of the leg, they don't have sensory manifestations or a transformative experience. I mean, they're happy that they're healed, and they say, "Thank you, doctor," and they disappear again. So, what fascinated me even more, because I started reading, I also visited Lourdes, as I told you. If you look in the Bible, and if you look at the biblical healing narratives, you will also find the same instantaneity and these transformative experiences. And if you go through church history, you will find the same phenomenon as well. For instance, if you look up the book of the City of God by St. Augustine, he also reports the same, and you get the same stories in Lourdes in the south of France, but you also get similar stories from Pentecostal healing services in the US. So apparently there is a pattern which is quite specific. I don't know if it is only within the Christian religion, but at least within the Christian religion, there is this pattern, which I think is different from what we regularly see in medicine. So now I want to skip this one because of time, because I think I'm a bit through with, no? Maybe I can come back to that other one, but so the third thing was about explanatory frameworks. Now, can we do of course, we don't have a full explanation. We can't say that it was God who was there during that healing. That is not something you can say scientifically. But at least you can say that these healings do not fit in a biomedical model. It is something different. It is at a different level. It is at a holistic level, and different aspects are involved. Then the experiences are so strong that we think that what we need is a horizontal epistemology. That means that you give equal weight to experiential and objective data. The experiential data are at the same level as the objective medical data. If you do that, then you can start to understand them. If you say, well, the objective data are important and the experiences are irrelevant to me, then it will be difficult to understand them. Then thirdly, we think that if you want to find because the medical specialists in the University Medical Center were also surprised. Some of them were not religious, and they said, well, it will not be easy to find a vocabulary for these healings. So since we found similarities with biblical narratives, with church history, we feel that we need theology, but also philosophy. We need the wisdom. We need science, but we also need the wisdom throughout the ages. We need the theology to find a vocabulary for the pattern we found. And I mean, that's still something which still is to come, but we are busy working on that. And then the last one, and I will start with the second line now. I think if we want to know more about it, there has to be an open dialogue between science and religion. Often it is not open. The dialogue often is not open from the scientific side, but also from the religious side. It is often not open. And now I'm getting to the first future direction. I think if we want to do further research, we should concentrate on these specific patterns. And I think we need qualitative research, and we need medical evaluations for that. And we need interdisciplinary study approaches. I think it is no point if just theologians investigate it, or only doctors, or only psychologists. I think you need all of them. So that was.
Thank you. One important question, of course, is what was the follow-up time? I mean, let's take multiple sclerosis. If you say there was an instant healing, but then I need to see some objective, results.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. Well, actually, of those serious chronic diseases, nearly all of them had this disease 7 or 8 years or longer. So it was not because we realized 2 of them were a bit shorter, but at least 7 of them, like the multiple sclerosis case, was already for 7 years. And
that was before.
That was, and after the healing, that's right. That's another. Most healings were also 7 to 8 years back. Some of them, most of them had suffered for the disease for quite considerable time, and also most of them was better already for a considerable time. In one of them, unfortunately, the case with Parkinson's, she had a partial relapse after 8. That was about 8-9 years. All the others are still okay. But there are also, of course, amongst all others, there are also some relapses of disease. That's also something we saw.
This extrasensory experience with the hand touching, was it like a perception there is an unseen hand, or was a healer who put his hand?
Sometimes there was a healer putting his hands, but mostly it was an unseen hand.
Okay.
So somebody felt, for instance, there was a man who was sitting at the table, and then he was not at that moment visiting a prayer healing service, but he felt a hand on his back, and then he had a strong healing experience, but also in the stomach, or the lady with Parkinson had the feeling that a tight net was removed from her head.
I have 2 questions, but first of all, let me thank you very much for this intriguing presentation. I'm really fascinated, and the first question would be, what was the impact, and what is your opinion on the healing that happened in your practice? And the second question would be, you mentioned Lourdes in France, and there is a commission in Lourdes which is invested to examine healings which supposedly happened there. Did that inspire you or help you or contrast your way of doing research?
No,
these are the 2 questions.
It helped me. Lourdes helped me. I went there for a few days, and I talked to the doctor at the medical desk there to learn from their methodology. And they have a commission, and then they have a set of criteria, which they call the Lambertini criteria, which they use to assess of if a case is. They only use the word unexplained. They don't use the word remarkable, but we use that set of criteria as well. So that was very helpful. And then your first question was what?
It's more personal one, but it's also on the researcher. Therefore, what was your opinion on that healing, and how did that impact you?
Actually, as a doctor, I used to be fairly skeptical of the subject. I thought, although I'm still a Christian, but I thought that should remain separate. Then this woman, in my practice, there were very strong discussions. But when it happened, I thought, well, this is very. You could argue about her disease, but there were some phenomena which I did not understand. She was disabled. She was in a wheelchair, and she was able to rehabilitate without a rehabilitation program. The same night she ran up and down on the street. what I saw, then also she used a lot of opiates, and she stopped that immediately. And normally you would expect that it would take some time to, that there would be symptoms of abstinence, but she did not have any abstinence. So there were some things which I did not understand. Then at the same time, I still think that such healings are only a minority. I mean, I see many patients in my practice who pray but don't get healed. So these are what I have examined are exceptions. I'm not going to say that that you must go and pray and you will be healed. I'm not going to say that.
It's interesting time gap. Some diseases have different causes of activity. Could be in terms of coincidence that something is going on. The expectation is high because when you go into healer, of course you're emotionally touched. Something, it makes something with you. Of course, we do know that mind produces some, let's say, physiological reactions. Even dopamine is released by cells which decided to quit the job. We can see sometimes such strange things. And you said these situations happened for several months, even years. So this is the unexpected part. It could be, of course, that this healing is incomplete, which is more realistic than complete healings for all even to stop dying or whatever. And so life was nevertheless proceeding, and you said they changed as a person. Maybe their spirituality changed. Maybe this is the most interesting part of it, not the healing story, but that something happened within them, in their mindset, or whatever it is, that they changed as a person.
Yeah, that's right. I find it also a very interesting part. It was also touched upon yesterday by this English professor when he had his presentation about voices. These voices, in a number of instances, also gave rise to transformational changes. So something happened. In those cases, it was not a healing, but it was the voice. And the more I think about it, I have read also on transformational experiences, and they can be very, very strong. And they can be together with a healing, but also with a voice of, well, for some other reasons.
First, I may ask a further question. In the set of interdisciplinary dialogue, I missed the psychologists or even psychoanalysts. What about, do you have any idea about that? Why not? By the way, I am both a theologian and a psychoanalytical psychotherapist. Therefore, I mean, maybe I missed it. Therefore,
I would like to incorporate.
No, it's not needed. It's already.
There was in the medical team of 5 doctors, there was a psychiatrist here from the university, and then in the supervisors there is Professor Gerrit Plas, and he's a psychiatrist as well. So we have 2 psychiatrists involved. I don't think not specifically psychoanalytic, but at least we have 2 psychiatrists, because that's a very, psychology and psychiatry are a very relevant discipline.
Presumably,
In this instance.
Yes.
I'm thinking with it, but it's not concrete. I cannot.
Okay. Thanks a lot for this beautiful presentation, which inspires that sometimes things happen which are unexpected. And it's good that we have no chance to explain them completely, but that the miracle is still there. We can stand there and say, wow.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you also.